coming up on Primetime News. The summit between South Korean President Park Geun-hye and Chinese President Xi Jinping takes place in Beijing ahead of China's war victory ceremony. There, the two leaders agreed to stand against any acts triggering tensions on the Korean peninsula. Plus, we zoom into the significance of the talks, where the two leaders have also agreed to hold a three-way summit with Japan. While momentum builds up between South Korea and China, North Korea continues to flip-flop over statements from the recent inter-Korean landmark deal. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday, September 2nd. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. In her sixth summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, today, President Park Geun-hye delved into North Korean issues as widely expected.
And our Chae Yu-sun brings us what the two leaders have achieved in their talks that also included a special luncheon for about an hour.
The leaders of South Korea and China said they oppose any type of action that could increase tensions on the Korean peninsula. Meeting one day ahead of China's World War II victory celebrations in Beijing, Presidents Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping agreed to strengthen dialogue to ensure the two Koreas' latest deal to defuse tensions is carried out.
북한의 DMZ 도발 사태는 언제라도 긴장이 고조될 수 있는 한반도의 안보 현실을 보여주었고 한반도 평화가 얼마나 절실한가를 보여준 단면이기도 하였습니다. 또한 한중 양국 간의 전략적 협력과 한반도의 통일이 영내 평화를 달성하는 데 얼마나 중요한지도 잘 보여주었다고 생각합니다.
Taking note of the recent international deal on Iran's nuclear program, the leaders agreed the six-nation negotiations to disarm the North should promptly resume. President Xi also supported President Park's policies aimed at peacefully reuniting the two Koreas. Looking beyond the peninsula, the two leaders agreed to work towards resuming a trilateral summit with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe sometime between late October and early November in Korea. The three-way dialogue has been suspended amid Tokyo's attempts to whitewash history. Addressing Seoul and Beijing's economic cooperation with Premier Li Keqiang, President Park agreed to join efforts to see their free trade deal take effect soon and to maximize the benefits from such agreement. More than 30 MOUs signed between the two sides on Wednesday include ones that aim to tear down non-tariff barriers and to spur trade and investments in the private sector.
President Park's office stressed the significance of Presidents Park and Xi exchanging views on regional peace and stability, marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II and the division of the two Koreas. On Thursday, President Park will join world leaders, including the Russian President and the UN Secretary General, at the Grand Victory celebrations. Chae Yu-sun, Arirang News, Beijing.
China is set to display its military might before the many high-profile officials and heads of state all over the world through its War Anniversary Parade.
For a closer look at the grand event that the whole nation is revolving around for the time being, here's our Kim Hyun-bin.
China has been preparing for the 70th anniversary ceremony of China's victory over Japan in World War II for months. Beijing has come a long way over the years to now stand just behind the United States, both economically and militarily. Fittingly, the ceremony serves as a chance for China to show off its economic and military power to the world. The highlight of the ceremony will be the largest ever military parade held in the heart of Beijing, with over 80% of the weaponry on display for the first time. State-of-the-art intercontinental ballistic missiles, hundreds of warplanes, and high-tech weaponry will be showcased. The parade will begin with honor guards on the front line, followed by a procession of 12,000 troops from all branches marching in sync, displaying China's military prowess. President Park Geun-hye, North Korea's Secretary of the North Workers' Party, Choi Ryong-hae, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon are among the 49 officials and heads of state scheduled to be in attendance for the massive parade. A commemoration ceremony will take place after the parade, where Chinese President Xi Jinping will take the podium to award veterans with military medals. Numerous cultural events are also scheduled to take place in the evening, under the theme, Victory and Peace. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And now for a closer look into the summit between President Park Geun-hye and Chinese President Xi Jinping, we have Professor Kim Jae-chun of Seoul University joining us via Skype. Thanks for being here, Professor.
Well, it's good to be here.
So time seemed to matter little to the two leaders as they talked past the scheduled time and even held a special luncheon. Quantity certainly stands for something. Does that put extra emphasis on the significance of this summit?
Well, certainly, but I think it was pretty much anticipated that President Park would receive a very special treatment from Chinese leadership. Although I think a special luncheon followed by the summit meeting was a little bit extraordinary. You know, it's a testament to the fact that the relationship between the two countries has reached another level, and the relations between the two countries has never been better than this.
Right, Professor, of course, the focal point of the summit will be on North Korea, and it seems like they've released a statement today that the two sides will stand together and act against any acts that trigger tensions on the Korean peninsula. What's your take on this statement?
I think both countries, I think President Xi Jinping and President Park are virtually on the same page. I think both countries came to an agreement that North Korean provocation and North Korean nuclear weapons program pose serious threats to the stability and peace in the region. So I think that's the reason why President Xi Jinping pledged further support on cooperating with, not with just South Korea, but with the other stakeholder countries in the region in terms of doing some more things to denuclearize North Korea.
And the two leaders today also agreed to hold a three-way summit with Japan. It's difficult to miss the anti-Japan subtext of China's war victory parade that's going to take place tomorrow. Does the summit among Seoul, Beijing, and Tokyo point to thawing relations of the three countries?
I think yes, because it's no secret that history issues have soured the relations between Korea and Japan, and also the relations between China and Japan. But they also will have to find ways in which they can band fences with Japan, and so that we will have to hold trilateral summit meetings between the three countries, and this could create a momentum to ease tensions between three countries, although it is very difficult to predict long-term effects of the three-way summit meeting, which is going to be held in late October or early November.
You've also mentioned that this is a big step toward in terms of diplomatic achievements of Korea. Could you tell us more about that?
I think it was a bit of a daunting diplomatic move on the part of President Park Geun-hye's government, given the nature of relationship between China and the U.S. Many people worry that President Park's visit to China could do some damage to our bilateral relationship with the United States. But we can maintain a good relationship with both countries, and we'll have to do this.
Right. On that note, when it comes to South Korean President Park Geun-hye holding summit talks with President Barack Obama, would you have any advice in terms of certain points that she could be a little bit more firm or a little bit more gentle in terms of persuading the U.S. with certain topics? Are there any points that you would like to point out?
I think we'll have to keep reminding our American counterpart that our position in the region is very different from Japan. In case of Japan, it is no secret that they placed all their bets on bilateral relations with the United States at the risk of doing damage to their relations with China. Actually, our strategic value can also increase. I mean, from the eyes of American strategists.
All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
North Korea seems to be retracting its promises made during the landmark inter-Korean agreement reached last week. The regime warned South Korea to stop interpreting the words to its own advantage. Hwang Ji-hye brings us this report.
Is North Korea trying to go back on its word? The regime's National Defense Commission said Wednesday that South Korea is interpreting the North's words for its own advantage and warned such actions could dampen relations. The statement comes just a week after a landmark inter-Korean agreement. Pyongyang had expressed regret over the recent landmine explosion that left 2 South Korean soldiers seriously injured, which Seoul considers equivalent to an apology by international standards.
Briefly saying regret is nothing more than an expression of I feel sorry for what you've been through.
In response, South Korea's Unification Ministry said this was not the time to be quarreling over the agreement.
It is not the time to argue about what's right or what's wrong. I reiterate that it is time for South and North Korea to sincerely implement and follow what has been agreed together.
Experts say North Korea's latest remarks should not be taken too seriously since it's most likely intended for a domestic audience.
But I think a lot of the domestic factors are playing into this somewhat, given that the North Koreans did not really come out on top in this negotiation. And so they would have to sell while still at the same time saving face.
As for to what extent the statement will affect the inter-Korean agreement, they say it depends on whether South Korea wants to move beyond simple talks to more substantive matters to improve future relations. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Moving on to domestic politics, labor market reforms continue to make headlines over at the National Assembly. The ruling Saenuri Party chief Kim Moo-sung put the reforms as the party's top priority during his parliamentary address on Wednesday. Our Chi Myung-gil has more.
The ruling bloc's chief identified labor market reform as the core item on its agenda for the second half of this year, calling it the key to boosting the nation's slowing economy and generating jobs for the youth.
The ultimate goal of labor reforms is to create jobs, especially for the young, and reduce labor costs to stimulate corporate investment. We also want to create a business-friendly environment to improve performance and encourage new investments.
Kim said job creation would lead to economic growth and provide welfare for the people. He added that labor market reform was the cornerstone for headway on other reforms, reiterating the need to reorganize the entire workforce and labor market system. The ruling party chief also promised to push ahead with reforms regarding how major conglomerates or chaebol are run.
Public resentment is growing over how family-controlled conglomerates are running their vast empires and the outmoded governance structure, which often leads to ugly fights. We must also stop conglomerates from gaining profit through unfair transactions in the market.
However, he stressed that reform should not be used to drag the conglomerates down or promote anti-corporate sentiment. Kim also promised to uphold President Park Geun-hye's 4 major reform drives centered on the labor, public, finance, and education sectors. Responding to Kim Moo-sung's speech, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy's chief, Moon Jae-in, said it lacked content on how to reform the conglomerates and added that Kim made no mention of raising corporate taxes. Chi Myung-gil, Arirang News.
In other news, more and more Chinese tourists are making the short flight across the West Sea now that Korea is declared free of the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. The outbreak scared tens of thousands of Chinese away, but local retailers say sales are finally on the rebound. Kim Min-ji provides us the details.
They're back. The number of Chinese visitors shopping at Korea's department and duty-free stores is back on the recovery track after being hit hard due to the recent MERS outbreak. Industry officials say Chinese tourist spending is approaching levels seen last year. Lotte Duty Free, the country's biggest duty-free chain, says its sales during the last week of August were down only 5% from the same period a year ago. Although sales have yet to return to normal, it's looking much brighter than the peak of the MERS scare in June and July, when sales slumped by up to 50%. However, market watchers say it's going to take time for sales figures to return to levels seen early this year. During the January to May period before MERS shook Korea's economy, the growth rate of sales to Chinese tourists stood at over 50% on year on average. In what could be a turning point for Korean retailers, China's calendar is packed with holidays from the end of September. China's Mid-Autumn Festival falls on the last weekend of September, and it's followed by a week-long National Day holiday, usually the peak season for Chinese tourists flocking to Korea. And to take full advantage, the local retail industry is busy preparing events to lure big-spending Chinese visitors. Samsung Group Shilla Hotel and Amusement Park Everland will hold a session in China to promote local tourism, while most department stores and duty-free chains will be showering tourists who spend a certain amount with gift vouchers and other freebies. Lotte Duty Free will host a concert in the southeastern port city of Busan, where roughly half of the participants are expected to be Chinese visitors. On top of this, the Seoul Family Concert has also been rescheduled to October, with more than 20,000 Chinese tourists likely to attend. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's Science Ministry announced Wednesday that Seoul and Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah City for Atomic and Renewable Energy signed an MOU for a pre-project engineering for exporting Korea's first smart reactor. Smart or System Integrated Modular Advanced Reactor are designed in a single container without any piping, making them much safer from possible leakages or accidents. The latest agreement is a follow-up of deals reached during President Park Geun-hye's visit to the Middle East in March this year. During the 3-year project worth $130 million, the two sides will exchange personnel and training to install 2 smart reactors in Saudi Arabia. Cultural experts from G20 countries have gathered in Seoul to discuss ways to make Korea's abundant culture become trendier through social media. For this story, we turn to our rookie reporter, Oh Soo-young.
Psy's world hit single Gangnam Style went viral 3 years ago, attracting billions of views on YouTube. This marked the height of Korean music, film and popular culture reaching global audiences, prompted by social media and digital devices. Now many are wondering what it could take to promote lesser-known aspects of Korean culture to digital platforms. To explore such a task, 15 global experts in food, media and various arts discussed this issue at a 3-day culture forum held by the Korea Image Communication Institute.
We invited opinion leaders from around the world to stir up ideas and show them Korea's authentic culture to share in their home countries.
During the first 2 days of the forum, experts explored diverse cultural assets of Korea, such as historical sites, modern art and soulful music.
So I think there's a real opportunity for traditional Korean culture and other, cuisine, dance, drumming, all this amazing stuff we've seen today to be shared more widely across social media to give people a deeper understanding of what the culture has to offer.
This taste of authentic Korean cultural heritage led to fruitful discussions on the final day.
Gangnam Style video, for example. Why is it that it went viral? It went viral because it was different, it was unique, and it was able to cross the language barrier, and it was able to reach out and make that uniqueness very accessible.
There's been a huge explosion of food sites, food photographs, people who Instagram their food. For people who, if you like, their first step into Korean culture, food seems like a fantastic way of doing it.
As such, various aspects of Korean culture, including food, were seen as potential gateways for a global breakthrough. Experts say for Korea to share more of its unique cultural treasures on social media, simple concepts need to be developed in more creative and spontaneous ways. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And for the top international news headlines, we turn to our Bruce Harrison at the News Center.
Today's focus: hundreds of police search for the killers of a veteran officer in the U.S. state of Illinois. Asian markets rally after a major scare in early trading, and Japan seeks a new Olympic logo after accusations of plagiarism.
But first, Bruce, let's start with the manhunt that's ongoing.
Daniel, this is a massive operation. Local, state, and federal law enforcement have blanketed northern Illinois in the search for the men suspected of killing Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz. Police have only described the suspects as 2 Caucasian men and 1 African-American man. They're believed to have the lieutenant's handgun and pepper spray. Gliniewicz policed the small community of Fox Lake for decades. He was known around the village lovingly by many as G.I. Joe.
Tonight, not only did Fox Lake lose a family member, I lost a very dear friend. The response today by law enforcement from local, state, and federal agencies has been remarkable.
Gliniewicz was alone Tuesday when he began to chase the suspects on foot after reports of suspicious activity. When back-off officers arrived, they found Gliniewicz shot and injured. He later died. The beloved police officer was the father of 4 young boys. Losses in China's shares have once again spooked Asian and European markets. Shares in China closed nearly flat Wednesday, but fell sharply during the day. Stocks in Shanghai lost more than 4%, but closing down 0.2%. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong posted the day's largest loss of 1.2%, and Japan's Nikkei closed down 0.4%. Germany's DAX opened higher, but traders there warned of risk tied to the world's second largest economy.
China is decisive for the global economy, especially for the German market. China helped the export firms get through the difficult stage of the European crisis, the Russian crisis. If China now continues to have problems and the negative sentiment fundamentally carries on, the global economy will have problems.
South Korean shares held on to finish in the black, but just barely, closing up less than 0.1%. Olympic planners in Tokyo troubled again. Japan has scrapped its logo for the 2020 Summer Games amid allegations of plagiarism. Organizers pulled the design Tuesday over public concern arose around a month after its launch. People began to question the logo right after its unveiling when Belgian designer Olivier Dabi said it was too similar to a design of his own. He then filed a lawsuit in a local court. Japanese graphic designer Kinjiro Sano created the logo and has denied the plagiarism allegations. And Japanese officials had stood firmly behind him. But public concern intensified after Sano's office asked a beer company to withdraw designs for promotional goods, admitting they were copied.
I think this issue affects trust. I want to hear an explanation, and if I'm convinced, then we can use the design again.
This is the latest mishap to befall Japan's planning for the Olympics. It's also scrapped plans for its new national stadium this summer due to anger over ballooning costs. 5 years and counting until those summer games. And that's your international news for now. Good night.
Heavy rain fell over a short time this afternoon in the capital, and Yeoju in Gyeonggi-do province received more than 100 millimeters of downpours. And as we can see, rain clouds are still hovering over some parts of the Korean peninsula, and the conditions will continue until late at night. And more rain is expected tomorrow as well, with 5 to 30 millimeters of precipitation in the forecast for across the much of the country, and daily highs will be similar to a tad higher than today, so let's take a closer look. Now the daily high here in Seoul will climb up to 27, while Daegu hikes up to 29, and Gwangju and Busan will top out at 28 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 28, while Dokdo rises to 26. Now the peninsula will go through a transition period this week with rainy days, and while conditions will gradually cool down, we'll have one last summer-like afternoon for the season this Friday under mostly sunny skies here in the capital. Well, that's all for the weather. Good night.
And we've come to the end of our newscast. Thank you so much for staying with us.
We'll be back same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.